Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the audience. The title is Can Industrial Cluster Strategy Improve the Competitiveness of Industry? Evidence from Nigeria. There is a resurgence of interest on clustering as a form of industrial economic policy in Nigeria. But clustering is not new. We had traditional clusters over several years, notably in Nnewi, in Onitsha, and in Kano. But there are no definitive evidence as to whether clustering actually produces some important gains as far as industrial economic policies are concerned. So in this paper, we aim to investigate whether there are actually benefits from agglomeration as far as the Nigerian manufacturing sector is concerned. The first part of the work, we actually used the World Bank Industrial Census Survey for Nigeria, which has 2,387 farms and organized around the following subsectors, including food, manufacturing, chemicals, electronics, and so on. Important thing that database does is to capture farms located in EPZs. And our working theory is that when farms that cluster actually perform better than those that do not. And those benefits actually arise from a number of sources, including networking, human capital mobility, and the sharing of knowledge. The theory and empirical work also allude to a number of possible channels through which clustering could benefit the farm and the industry, inclusive of the productivity and technological spillovers, better access to skilled labor, lower transaction costs, and greater specialization and division of labor. We attempt in this paper to provide answer to a range of questions. Let me say up front that this is pretty much still a work in progress. Some of these issues have not been addressed in the present paper, but we are certainly thinking about it. The first question will be whether farms actually cluster, and where we observe clusters, whether there are gains that arises, and those gains, whether they include productivity improvement, the knowledge transmission process we want to know, and then if we establish that clusters are actually beneficial, we'll be interested to see how industrial policy could be framed in a way that it could foster fostering. Again, I said that, well, part of this, some of these questions are still pending, and there is a fieldwork component which perhaps is a better approach to answering some of these questions. Nigerian authorities have used FTZ and EPZ as a component of industrial policy. Sorry. There are 24 free trade zones in Nigeria licensed at the present time. Only 13 of them are currently operational. Some are still under construction, and some are at varying stages of development. There are several troubling aspects of Nigerian free trade zone experiences, some of which we have tried to catalog there. Host governments are not necessarily supportive. Government policy is erratic. There is a shortage of pool of skilled labor to draw on, and infrastructure, the perennial infrastructure problem, and of the huge cost of borrowing. Some of those problems that apply to the wider industrial sector also very much applies to farms that are located in export processing zones. Our methodology, we start that by saying that several empirical studies tend to jump the gun by going straight to assume that clustering is occurring and then go ahead to assess the benefits of clustering. So we are going to take it step by step. The first step will be, first of all, to determine whether clustering is occurring as far as the Nigerian manufacturing sector is concerned, the pattern of that clustering, and in doing this, we are going to be using what we call the DO index, which was proposed by Doraton and Hooverman in 2000 in their work, 2002 work. The DO index has some merit. It helps in terms of exact location of enterprises. That's what it uses. It uses that to locate the index rather than just geographical areas or regions. It makes use of continuous distance data and therefore eliminates problems that arises when farms are located at the border, and also allows us to do comparison by countries and by industries. This is not exactly eye-friendly, but this is the formula for the DO index. And we can elaborate on it with this. So this is a number of technical details as to how the DO index works. There is the calculation of the bilateral Euclidean distance. And ultimately, there is a distance level of 10 kilometers will help us determine how clustered an industry is. Farms within that distance are defined as being in the same cluster. We also use the Gaussian kernel with the bandwidth set as per Silverman 1986. Nigeria has a very good data set for us to do that, about 64,000 farms, actually over 64,000 farms. And these farms, this data set is complete with addresses of all enterprises, the number of employees, and even the 4-digit industrial classification of the enterprise. The existence of precise location helps us to calculate the DO index, and we avoid issues that has to do with administrative areas when analyzing. The first thing we do is to get the geocode. We geocode the addresses to obtain longitude and latitude coordinates for each farm. In doing that, we were able to establish that coordinate for 70% of the farms. For 30%, we were not able to do that. But we do not believe that this error is systematic. We think it's either due to incomplete data or inaccurate addresses, which may arise in the process of reporting. This is a description of the methodology for doing the EPS arm of this study. The WICS survey in two categories. There's a universal survey, there's a more restricted survey for manufacturing, and the database is partitioned into 12 major modules. I mentioned this earlier. These are the sectors that were considered. Importantly, 12% of the surveyed farms were actually located in export processing zones. The formula for calculating technical efficiency, there is a dummy. LEXP is a dummy for farm located in EPZ, and there are a number of other dummies as per the vector X, including the farm size, the foreign ownership dummy, the public company dummy, export destination, education of manager, and export for farms that export at time T is equal to 1. The results for the EPS, a couple of descriptive analyses. In terms of average number of labor employed per farm, for EPS, it exceeds that of non-EPS zones. In terms of skilled labor employed by farms in EPZ, it is double those of non-EPS zones. In terms of skilled labor, it's 4 times those of NPAZ. Number of management and non-professional workers in EPZ is 3 times those in non-EPZ zones. The average monthly compensation per employee, categorized by skilled, unskilled, and management. So it exceeds the non-EPS zone by 50%, and by 100% for unskilled labor, and also by 100% for production workers and for management staff. In terms of average annual overhead cost per farm, electricity is 3 times. This is a somewhat surprising result.
5 minutes.
Okay, electricity is 3 times higher than non-EPS. Fuel is 5 times higher. Cost of transportation is 5 times higher than for farms in non-EPZ zones. Labor productivity is higher for farms in EPZ zones. Capital productivity is also higher. Capital intensity is less. Capacity utilization is more for farms in NPEZs, and average technical efficiency is practically the same across the 2 categories of farms. The perverse result we find here is location in export processing zones actually have a negative coefficient, which is quite significant. And we thought that may be because farms in EPZ. EPZs are actually just EPZs by name. They still suffer from pretty much the same problems that farms located outside EPZ zones suffer for. These are results for clustering. We notice the clustering of farms around the southwest, Lagos, Ogun axis, around Port Harcourt, Aba axis in the south-south, and around the Kano-Kaduna axis in the north. For enterprises, it's virtually the same. We notice the same pattern of clustering. For large farms, it's a bit dispersed. And for smaller farms, again, much more a denser pattern. This is our result for the DO index. And what we have is that manufacturing farms are dispersed between 0 and 100 kilometers in Nigeria. I mean, and if you compare that with the result that Duratan Ababa found, which is 0.04 within 10 kilometers for pharmaceuticals and textiles. When we plot this as we did here, we expect to see some peaks. Fortunately, there are no peaks. Again, giving substance to the fact that at the moment we have not been able to establish that there are clustering going on using the DO index. So we have a number of stacks sets in the days and weeks ahead. We want to assess the significance of this result, and that will involve looking at the randomness in terms of location by randomness and some relevant counterfactuals. We consider the set of all existing sites for enterprises as the set of all possible locations, and then for the 277 possible sites we are located, and 11,000 of them are manufacturing farms. So we calculate the DO index along this line. We also do it for smaller manufacturing farms to see if there are differences in patterns of clustering. We also take some illustrative industries, again, to establish whether clustering is occurring in particular sectors and not in others. I thank you.
Thank you very much.